Bonjour, good afternoon. Welcome to Alliance Française for this first edition of She Creates, which is a program that has been put together by Anne and the team at Nikon, and that is being supported by the French Embassy through the Création Africa program. Just to give you a little information on that initiative, the Création Africa program has been going on for 2 years now. And to give you an idea of the kind of project we support and the kind of platform we support, well, obviously this is one of them. There are three main things this project funds: platforms such as this one, capacity building programs, mobilities to support talent, attend festivals in France or in some other parts of the continent. And the last dimension is project funding as well. Um, we just recently concluded, I don't know, maybe some of you saw that call for project online in January. It was a call for digital project in animation, VR, video games. We are about to do the pitching session with the finalists tomorrow, and the winning project will soon be announced. And we have another project, E-Stage 2, which is supporting touring of companies, bands across Classic Network in Kenya, which is a network of cultural venues in Kisumu, Mombasa, Lamu, Nakuru, Nairobi here. Yeah, so that is in a nutshell the kind of initiatives we have. And now I will give the floor to Anne. Anne, I can't see you. Okay. All right. You tell us a little more about Secrets. Thank you very much.
Yeah, whoever's coming up, please be careful. Good evening, everyone. My name is Andanu. I am co-founder at Nikon. Thank you to everybody that's come today. Before I say much, I'd like to thank Alliance Française for coming in as partners for this particular program, which is She Creates. I'll give a shout out to the powerhouse, Miss Harsita Waters, for listening to us and just coming on board as partners for this particular one. And then, of course, the French Embassy, Creation Africa, through the French Embassy in Kenya. Merci beaucoup. I was talking to somebody just the other day, and I was letting just when we started off in 2014 as Nikon, there were very few women that were, within the creative space. But look at at us right now in Africa. There's so many successful stories that there are, not just in Kenya, but Kenyans that are doing some amazing stuff out there. And opportunities like this usually are good for me to be able to reintroduce myself and also to let people know who we are as Nikon and what it is that we do. So I'll quickly just take us through who Nikon are, who we are as Nikon. So for those that don't know, Nikon is a platform for creatives within the digital art space. And we exist for three main reasons: to enable creatives in Africa to be able to enhance, showcase, and collaborate. And we have five main pillars, which are gaming, comics, animation, film, and tech. But then there's a lot more that usually falls under that. There's art, there's music, there's illustration, and dance, all that. And of course, you can find us on our website, which is nikon.co.ke, and you can also find us on our socials, which is Nikon all through. How do we enable creatives in Africa to showcase? I may not be able to go through everything. So what I'll do, we'll just pick up, we picked up a few things that we're able to highlight on this. One of this, of course, is the Nairobi Comic Con that we started in 2014 that brings together enthusiasts, professional stakeholders within the creative industry. So if you're a nerd and a geek, you love comics, you love gaming and esports and things like that, you're an illustrator, you love to put together games, this is a platform for you. And the beautiful thing about it is that it brings everybody within the ecosystem, as a nerd or as a participant or as a stakeholder. That's the platform for you. Then, of course, now we've also moved to Mombasa. We've done one edition of Mombasa Comic Con, hoping to go back again this year. We realized that a lot is done within the city, and many people get to neglect the coastal region where there's a lot of talent and there's also need. So we are also in Mombasa doing the Mombasa Comic Con. The other one that is very dear to me is the kids convention that you hold every year. And this is really to be able to empower and inspire, celebrate the next generation of tech savvy um, and creative kids in their early teens. And this also happens every year. So if you look at this, you'll be able to see some of the images of the things that we've done all across. How else does Nikon enable creatives in Africa to be able to showcase? We have what we call the Wabunifu series, which is a series of conversations that we have with creatives in Kenya and in Africa, where we're able to let them tell their stories, elaborate who they are, tell their stories, give them a platform to be known, to be seen, to be heard. If you go to our YouTube page, which is Nikon, you'll be able to see some of the conversations that have been recorded and are there. What we'll also be doing throughout this season for this particular cohort is every conversation that we are going to be recording is also going to be found on that particular platform, as well as the Alliance Française YouTube page. So even for today, for people who might not be here, they're able to access this particular event on the YouTube page. So this is just one of the guests that we had at the one of the conversations that we had. Nadsoko is also another one of the ways that we one of the platforms that we also use as Nikon to be able to showcase creatives in Africa, which is an innovative online marketplace tailored for African creatives to showcase and sell their products and services. So as a comic book writer, as an artist, as an illustrator, you're able to put your stuff on that particular platform, and then more people are able to know who you are and what you're all about. Enhancing. What do we do under this? So Nikon organizes a series of enhancing programs through panel discussions, workshops, master classes, and trainings, and programs such as this. So these are just images of the previous things that we've done since 2014. As I said, we can't cover everything that we've been able to do over the years, but that is one of the things those are some of the things that we've done over the years. We've also been privileged to be able to be invited to schools where we've been able to speak to students, people who are interested to get into this particular space. You know, what I love, and whenever we were able to visit schools, is the passion and the interest that they have, yet not too much of a direction or a career path. And whenever we are able to talk to them, you can see them lighting up, them seeing hope in this particular space. So these are some of the things that we've done in terms of enabling creators to be able to enhance what it is that they do. And lastly, and very importantly, is to create a platform where creatives are able to network and collaborate. And over the years, we've been able to see some amazing collaborations as a process throughout this particular process. What is She Creates? The previous page. So She Creates, which is a women in creativity and digital literacy program, really aims to do the following. Number one is to empower women creatives. This is to be able to provide a platform for creatives to be able to showcase, enhance their skills and their talents. Very importantly, for them also to be able to promote literacy and education by developing and strengthening their critical skills, such as digital, financial, and media literacy. Very importantly, also for us, what we want to be able to achieve through this particular program is to foster community. I love it when I meet women within this particular space that are active or even very interested in getting into this into the creative and the digital art spaces. And very importantly, also to boost representation. As I said, many years ago when we started off, there were not too many women. But for this particular program, we had over 200 people, like close to 200 people register. Not everybody has attended. I'm hoping that they're on their way, but all the same, that should tell you the interest of the, and the need for us to be able to give attention to this particular, for such particular programs for this particular agenda. And I love it when I meet women, young girls who love what they do, who want to be able to learn and engage and get mentored and grow in their skills. And that is the reason why we are doing this particular program. And most importantly as well is to be able to provide program resources. So in a nutshell, that is the particular program that you're going to be running. At the end of this, I'll be able to take you through what this year's cohort looks like in terms of what the next steps are going to be. Lawrence?
Another round of applause for Maurice and Anne for their amazing opening remarks to today's launch of She Creatives. So I want to welcome you guys officially to today's launch. I really hope you're excited. Are you excited? Amazing, amazing. I want to say a huge thank you. You've taken a time from school, from work to be here, and we really, really appreciate it. Moving on to our next part of the program, we have invited guests who are gurus in the creative and tech space. So I want to invite Joy Alunga, who's an award-winning interdisciplinary artist and renowned creative innovator, to have her panel list introduce themselves. A round of applause for Joy.
Hello. Hi. I'm so happy that you people are here, and I'm looking forward to have a conversation today about the women in the digital and creative space in Kenya and also globally. We have two incredible women that are going to be part of us. Dorothy and Joy, could you please come forward and introduce yourself? We'll start with you, Dorothy.
Oh, hi everyone. My name is Dorothy Orina. I'm the programs manager at Melio Games, which is what you know. What you don't know is that I have a background in mechatronic engineering.
Yes, you can go.
Okay. So I have a background in mechatronic engineering, and I got into game development by accident. By that, I mean, growing up, I wasn't a very remarkable gamer. I mean, I played all the games there were on TV, on like Road Rash and Pebble Place, and I'm a very competitive person by nature. So every time I'd find a very good game we could play with my siblings or my cousins or my friends, I'd always be on the high score, right? But I never really considered gaming as a career for me. So what happened is I was studying mechatronic engineering, right? And I was privileged to be in a school that really got into tech and explored every different part. So regardless of the course that you're taking or whichever path you're taking, there are these clubs after school that you can join to learn any other skill that you'd like. So I go on experimenting. I learn the different programming languages there are. I do C sharp, I go machine learning, and I'm like, nah, this is not my thing because I'm a very creative person by nature also. So doing a very technical course, I wanted something that would allow me to do a creative outlet. So I'm more into fashion and style, and I got into AR, VR with the goal of exhibiting that as my creative outlet. So while exploring this, I realized that I'd need some very expensive equipment for testing the applications that I made. And I realized that these tools are very interchangeable because I was using Unity and C Sharp to program for AR and VR applications. And I realized that gaming also uses the same, right? So I got into gaming as a bypass, wanting to go through gaming to learn how to utilize these tools and further get and later get into what I like. But then I got stuck there because it became really interesting very quickly. And I got into game development, learned about Malio Games through their Game of Africa bootcamp, which is what I trained with. And I got to see this other side that I didn't know about game development. And going through that program, it also gave me a platform to see the need of a community and how other people still don't know about this industry that is really booming. Gaming is actually bigger than film and music combined. It generates that much revenue globally. So, looking back at where I was and where I'm at with this industry and opportunity that people haven't tapped into, I now got into a space that allowed me to empower other people to be there. So I now took over this program that I joined with into gaming, Game of Africa, and now I manage that program with Malia Games.
Thank you so much. Joy, could you please introduce yourself and tell us how you got into the field that you're in?
Super. This is very interesting. I didn't have a roadmap. When I finished Form 4, and I'll take it all the way back. So, first, my name is Joy Mwangi, currently serving as the COO and co founder at Twiva. Before that, I was the CEO at Art Animation, which was my first studio, and I founded it when I was 26 years. And so, I do love that you're talking about untapped potential within the space. So, when I finished Form 4, I wanted to be a DJ. I think that's where my creativity started. So I wanted to be a DJ, and I tell my mom, you know what, mom, I just want to do DJing, and she's like, not in my house. If you come from Christian backed home, they're thinking, okay, so this is my daughter, in a nightclub, playing music, there's alcohol. And so she says, you know what, I'll trade you something. Why don't you go to campus, do a course that you like, and then bring me the degree? I'll hang it as a photo frame, then go do DJing. I said, bet, we'll do that. So I go to Daystar and I do PR. And then every person who finishes school has this problem for it's now internship time for you to graduate. And I'm back to the drawing board. I'm saying, okay, so I can't do DJing as an internship. What can I do? And so I went to Standard Group, and I'm so happy to actually have my mentor who taught me my skills then because I was a TV producer. And I keep saying the one thing I have learned in life is knock on that door, you never know, it might just open. So I go to Standard Group and I say, I want to see the HR. They say, okay, how can I help you? I say, I'm here for an internship. She's like, sis, I didn't advertise. I said, I know, maybe you'll have something for me. And that's how I got my first job. So I do media for about 4 or 5 years, and my shows in there, and that's part of creativity. I did my Shamzuka, I did the Entrepreneur, I did Straight Up, I did Club Kiboko. I love children, and so that's where animation comes to be. So I leave standard media. My next job happens to be in a software firm where I did marketing, and then now I get to a space where I meet someone who says, hey, I like you, I don't know you, I see your passion, I love children, and so do you. Why don't we start a business? So I knew nothing about animation. And so I'm learning from the ground up. Talk about, faith and baptism by fire. So at 26, there's this young girl who's saying, I want to start a studio. Again, it's the equipment, it's the talent, it's learning how to manage, it's learning how to lead. And the first thing we started to do was to train because a lot of people don't know how the market works. The assumption is we know. And as you go to school, you're learning coding, you're learning all these things that still bake into animation. But why don't we start by training them? So in another 2 3 years, it then gets such momentum that it becomes a leading program in Africa. And of course, we got backed up by Kenya Film Commission. We worked with guys in Hollywood. It was really fantastic. And then at some point, I say, you know what, I dare to dream again. So I meet another business partner, where I'm serving at Twiva. And we are a social commerce platform that basically does this. We help influencers to sell for brands and actually continue to earn and have a living. So it's been very interesting. I've been in the space for about 11 years and I can say a lot, but that's just in a nutshell who Joy Mwangi is.
Okay, thank you so much. Dorothy, you lead a program that empowers aspiring game developers. How do you see your role influencing the future of Africa gaming?
Okay. So this program that I lead is called Game Up Africa, and it's a talent development initiative by Melio Games that serves as a launchpad for upcoming African game developers. And So before I talk about Game Up Africa, let me tell you about the key main factors of the game industry so that you see how our role plays. Because we have the Malio Games, which develop games, and then we have the program side Game Up Africa, which is now empowering the ecosystem. So within the game industry, we have four different key stakeholders. And first is the general public, right? These are the people who will play your games. These are the people who might end up being your talent. And they're the people who will develop the interest to also help your business monetize. So after the general public, we have the industry, which is what we are. We are developing games and we are sending this out to the public. Then we have the investors who are offering the resources and financial capability to game studios to develop these games. And we have the policymakers, which is the government. And if the government is not on your side, then you very well know it's very hard to even succeed as an industry. So Game Up Africa has key objectives. One is to upskill. So we train on game development, programming with Unity, C# for mobile games. As we train, we create this capability to develop. So besides the games that they create within the bootcamp that we offer, they can go out to create their own game studios. This enables them to also increase the number of games that are being produced on the continent. So there's this very interesting that happens every time I'm at an event. You'll talk about game studios and developing games, and someone is going to be like, "Are there games being created in Africa?" And I mean, it's puzzling to me now that I'm in the industry and I know, but I come to realize that this is actually a possibility, and not just with these people, even the people that are really close to me, they still don't know that games are being made in Africa. And then when you bring this down to Kenya, people don't even know that there are game studios. Let me just make this interactive for a bit. Does anyone know a game studio in Kenya? Raise your hand. One game studio. Okay. Two people. The rest? Right? Okay. There's so many people in this room who still don't know, and it's become very common. So we're trying to make it a commonplace. When you think of games, you see how right now, if you mention Kenyan music, people know Njarai Mutoria, right? You know Kenyan films, and people are actually watching them on Netflix. And the game industry is still growing, but that is where we want to get it at a place where people know that this also exists in Kenya. It's being created in Kenya, in Africa, and this is a place that we can also tap into it. So this is for the general public. For investors, we're also making them see that this is another market that they can expand to, and there are revenue forecasts that are positive within this market. And for government, we're also making them see that with all these projects that they're doing, for example, with culturalizations and museums, they can also tap into gaming as a way to make people interact with heritage and culture and national history. So it's this other part that we're also making them see that it is possible, and to make it favorable for game studios to also succeed within the country.
Thank you so much. Joy, having co-founded 2 companies by 26, which is very impressive. How do you balance creativity, leadership, and business in general?
In fact, just to peg on to what Dorothy has said, balance, it comes with a lot of collaboration. I think both for the film, gaming, and animation industry, a lot of people don't understand it. So collaborating with people who can give you the boosting, and she said it so well. So first is I got collaborative partners who gave me funding. Case in point, I had Kenya Film Commission. A lot of creatives, by the way, are cracking software because they can't afford it, right? And so you find you went, you cracked, it was Adobe, it was Unity, it was Toon Boom. But even if you put out your work, these companies will come after you, and they're like, I want to see your license. So partnerships as well. So we got a partnership with Toon Boom that allowed us to, again, through our boot camps, to facilitate young people to be able to then, kind of create their craft. So that's helping me as Joy in terms of how do I run the business. But number two, how did I get to balance was a lot of upskilling. As I said, I didn't know much about animation as I was getting into the industry, but ignorance is no defense. When you get into rooms and you're talking to investors, they want to know data, give me tangibility. When you talk about, can I invest in what you're trading in is IP, that's intellectual property, they don't understand. So you need to know that. You need to know a lot of law. Again, running a business, I say the fancy title is a CEO, but truly you're the KYM, kazi ya mkono. So you need to know a lot of things. So upskilling. Then number three was just having this, right? Being able to have town halls and actually create awareness about what you're doing. And a lot of people then kind of come back and say, hey, I can partner with you to do XYZ. So being able to do events, and we did a lot of boot camps as well, to be able to understand and to nurture talent who we then recruited within our studio space. And something else that helped us to balance creativity is also to consume content, right? It's the same thing. People would say, is there animation that is coming from Africa, from Kenya? By the way, just to develop like a 30-second animation is very expensive, right? Expensive in terms of talent, but also in terms of funding. So being able to then see, how do I work with the right kind of people? And by the way, it's not always about the money. I remember half the time would work on a project and work with artists and say, I can't pay you because remember, in my channel or my value chain, I have a scriptwriter, I have an illustrator, illustrator, I have a 2D, I have a 3D, I have a sound director. I can't afford to pay all these guys, but we can do something phenomenal, take it to the government, the stakeholder. They kind of see it and they say, can I actually deploy it to do something bigger for the country? And that again promotes tourism and whatnot. So what was that one thing that helped me to balance is just having people believe in me. It's not always, it doesn't happen like that, but also having partners and also daring to dream. Like keep trying until you fail, but keep trying either way. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So this is for both of you. How do you measure impact, not only in your organization, but for women specifically in your space? How do you measure that? We'll start with you, Dorothy.
Okay, impact. Um, so borrowing from what Joy has said, I think the key thing is data, understanding that data, right? And one thing when you look at the data of people who are applying to boot camps, for example, at Game Up Africa, we get a rough percentage of 20% women. And this has risen because when we started in 2021, it was around 16%. So we've been really trying to encourage people to join. And I think one thing has been women are very capable actually, because when you see their work, you wow, but then you wonder why you're not applying for these opportunities. And I think there's this really huge aspect of lack of confidence or imposter syndrome, right? Because people are doing amazing work, but when you get them to apply for an opportunity, then they probably think, I'm going to let this pass for this other person and not me. Maybe I'm not the best person to do that. And that is something that we're still trying to address also when we get into these town halls or meetings or events, especially when it's just women focused, because now you don't have a choice. It's you and it's your chance, right? You're not leaving this up to the men. And when I go back to data, for gaming, a great prerequisite is infrastructure, and then there are other growth catalysts of which you try to measure the data to see whether the industry is sustainable. So for infrastructure, it's mostly, do people have access to electricity? People have access to internet? Do people have access to these devices? And once they have that, the growth catalysts for gaming now is a talent pipeline, right? Which is what we're doing with Game Up Africa. We're giving them a space to upskill. So if you want to learn game development, you go to development. If you're an artist, if you're a fashion designer, you can create fashion for game characters, right? If you're interested in audio and DJing, you can create sounds for these games, right? So you want to measure how many people are getting upskilled and how many people are getting employment in the industry. Are there clear pathways to success? How informed are investors, and you want to track how many investors are investing into the continent, and how much money is being invested compared to other places, or how many investors are investing into women-led companies and organizations. And lastly, the connections that are there within the industry. So for a growing industry especially, it's very hard to grow on your own. Partnerships and collaborations take you much further down the line. And with game industry, it's very related to film and animation. So with the game industry, what we're trying to do is to borrow the things that are working in film and animation and music, while eliminating those challenges that those industries are facing. Because if you look at the Nigerian music industry, for example, it had a really large boom after they started collaborating with the Western artists. So Burna Boy with Ed Sheeran, and I know we have our own opinions about that, but revenue speaking, this has really brought a large visibility and representation and a higher revenue on that music industry. So is it possible for us to also do cross-country collaborations, cross-industry collaborations as we try to grow that industry, and then tracking that data to see if we're going into the right direction?
Thank you. Joy, what about you?
Sure. I mean, just to add on to that and not to reiterate too much, we talked about data. Data helps us to know, are the programs we're executing actually impactful? And the impact is the output, right? I can give you the skill, but did I get you a job? Did I get you a collaboration that really helped you to, kind of sustain yourself? And just to maybe emphasize, I think when you talk about women participation, and I say this as many times as I can, we're in an era where women empowerment has been the dominating song. Unfortunately, we are hospitable in spaces we should not be as women, right? We've said it well. There are programs, there's funding, there's investors. Like we're looking for women. In fact, most NGOs nowadays are saying we want to do programs and we're focusing on 70% of the women. Now, the question is, where are the women, right? So we put out a call out, the women are not participating. They join the programs, they're falling out, 30% of the time. So again, even when you look at the data, men are becoming more aggressive, not because they're capable, but because they're consistent, right? So I say one way that you're able to actually really dominate within the creative space is yes, believe in your craft, but be consistent in learning and showing up. So how do we then measure that? It's the data. The data will tell us what you're doing. Is it working? Is it not? But first and foremost, can the women just show up? That's what I'd say. Yeah.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask both of you, in your specific organization, how many women do you collaborate or work with currently?
Fantastic. I like that. So currently at Twiva, we're actually 80% women, right?
Fantastic.
And by default, I think they actually, not that we said we want to hire women, but they actually did show up, right? The one thing that really stands out, and I have nothing about against the men who are in the room, by the way, but women have this thing where when they're passionate about something, they really go after it. They're willing to learn, they take feedback, and that goes the long haul. Not to say that men don't, right? And so naturally, even in an interview, they sell themselves better, right? They're storytellers. They're telling you their journey. They're not reading for you their CV. And when it comes to their work, they're willing to learn. So for us, it's 80% women, hoping that we can keep it there. But yeah, so far, and it's enjoyable to work with women as well.
Thank you. What about you, Dorothy?
For us, we are 40% women, and similarly, we didn't particularly go for women, and we're hiring women. I think one of the thing, and Joy has mentioned it, it's that discipline and resilience. Are you constantly there? Are you, for example, if it's a boot camp, are you staying till the end, or are you dropping off midway? And so when we started, it was very low, right? I think we were only like 3 women, if I'm not wrong, right? And that number has continued to grow even as we're seeing more people joining the boot camp and showing this interest. And I think there's a very interesting way that women express themselves. It's very definitive in terms of how they portray their perspectives and their experiences. So seeing how this also applies into game design and those experiences being brought about into games, that has been very interesting to see more women getting to put that into the industry.
Okay, thank you. We all agree with we have some barriers in the industry, right? So could you please share with me and with all of us there's some systematic challenges that still exist for women in your industry and how we can collectively address them? Let's start with you, Joy.
Super. So the first glaring one is gender bias. It's something we can't do away with, but it's there. Where women, and I keep laughing when you go to a boardroom, they're like, "Hey, Joy, do you want to serve us tea?" No, I didn't come here to serve you tea, boss. And so gender bias on, and that's a very light note. You'd find even with technicality. Now, here's the thing about the film, animation, and gaming sector: it's not about your gender; it's about how good you are, right? I remember in our boot camps, we actually used to have our animators collaborate with studios abroad. And the feedback we would get is that you guys are generalists. Like, you know tidbits of everything, and yet for them, they work with specialists. So, are you actually going to really fine tune your craft and choose that one thing that you want to do? Sometimes you want to be multifaceted, which is not a bad thing, but it also works against you. So, in terms of gender, you'd find that yes, because it's also mainly male dominated, it has something to do with it, and you'll see it in meetings, but let that not withstand you in saying what it is that you want to say. In fact, how we commanded audience is that you're always that babe who has a question, always that babe who has something to say, but when you're opening your mouth, are you actually smart at what you're saying, or are you just speaking? Another systematic barrier was that it would be skilled. Are you actually good at what you're doing, and are you doing something about it? The third thing I would see is our retention. We drop off too quick, right? Again, it's in the boot camp, you find 80% or 90% are men, women are dropping off. So how would we work to, oh, and the last thing, by the way, as I let Dorothy also talk about some, is I don't know why. Women work against women in the workspace. For some reason, and I've heard it a lot, that female bosses are bees And it should not be like that, right? When you see another woman thriving, you actually want to cow her down so that you kind of remain to be the boss. It should not be like that. We should be mentoring. When you see boys, actually, boys have, they call it a boys' club in the workspace, right? They collaborate. They don't call out on each other in a bad way. They're saying, hey, let me help you. How can I pull your weight? You're failing. How can I help you? Women, we don't do that. You're saying, oh, you're doing better. Done. Demote this person. So again, this is some of the barriers. What can we do? I think collaboration as women, we need to support one another, lift each other up. If someone is doing great, tell them about it, right? Say, hey, I see you. I like what you're doing. Nowadays, we say LinkedIn is a global village, right? You can meet someone without meeting someone, right? So if you see the post and you like it, it's that game, give them feedback. I'm in a group for A3K, that's Animation Association of Kenya. And what artists are doing is they put their work and they're asking guys to give feedback. Can we normalize to actually give feedback and say, hey, your lighting can improve, your craft can improve in this way? Feedback helps someone to grow. That's number one. Number two, can we be different when we get to sit on this side of the chair? That starts with joy. That, hey, when you're hiring someone, have that decency and also the willingness to mentor the person behind you. I believe in passing on the baton. If I sit on this chair for 20, 30 years, I'm not doing this chair justice. It needs, fresh traits. It needs new minds. It needs new ideas. But how can I also collaborate with people behind me? Right now, we're in an era where we're hiring Gen Z and they're like, it's not giving. And so, hey, they're teaching us new ways of working, right? And so, how are you working with them? When they come into that HR interview and they have a PSN, don't put them aside because they look different. Understand them. So yeah, I think those are some of the things that we can do.
Thank you. Dorothy, please.
Right. So I'll just add, because most of what Joy has said is what I also experience. And I think, just to add on gender bias, so with games we rely a lot on investment, right? And so the greatest challenge we face is not getting that investment, especially when you are a female lead, right? So there is that bias that already exists, and it's very hard to get through. But it's something that we are working on with policies and getting to speak to more investors. And just to also echo, women need to be present, right? Because we are availing equal opportunities, and the opportunities are there, especially to upskill and to also get internships, work. And we just need to be that disciplined and resilient to make sure that we are fighting for that space, and we're not waiting to be selected or chosen, but we are also fighting to be in that space. Yeah.
Thank you so much. The next question is, the gaming and animation industry in Africa are experiencing rapid growth. I believe we all agree. How do we ensure this growth is sustainable, especially for women led business? And how important it is to monetize what we create? How do we do that? Let's start with you, Dorothy.
Okay. I think with games, we need to start thinking of them as businesses as opposed to just games. The minute you say games, people just think, okay, we're creating a project and that's it, maybe like a passion project. But games are as businesses like any other. So the moment you're getting into games, you need to start thinking about who your consumer is. Are you creating with the consumer in mind, or are you creating something that you like and you think people might like, right? And going back to data, so even as you're creating with games, it's usually a very continuous iterative process. So you create a part, you bring it to players, just your close group, you let them play and see which part they interact with. And it's very possible to track that within the game. So you see which buttons they click the most. If you have different modes in your game, which ones they interact with the most. And people will pay where they see value. So when you see this data and understand that my players are mostly interacting with this, then it's most probable that they will pay for that, as opposed to this other feature that you probably thought will be cool, but people don't think it's cool anyway. With games, there are different ways to monetize. So the first one is having a premium game, which doesn't work too well within the continent. And this is where, so you all know Play Store, App Store, and there are games that are free to download, right? Then there are premium games which you pay a certain fee to download. That's one way of monetizing games. The second way is through in-app purchases, right? So if you play Candy Crush, for example, you get to a point where you need power ups to beat that level. So you pay something and then you get the power up, or you pay to get a different costume for your character. And these are things that are continuous. Some of these things that you pay for will probably impact how you interact with games. If it's let's say a first person shooter game and you're buying weapons, for example, so somebody who doesn't buy will have a less experience than you who buys it, right? And the third way is through ads. So for ads, we have interstitial ads, the ones which you want to skip but you can't skip, right? The annoying ones. You also have the banner ads, which just appear maybe at the bottom, and then we have reward ads, which are you're playing a game and you lose, right? So it asks you to play a game and then you restore your progress. So these are the different ways, and there are different ways to think creatively about ads, because they're not all bad, right? So some people will actually want to see ads in your game if they can give them something that they don't want to pay for. So instead of buying something with money in the game, you can watch an ad and get that something within the game. And that's also a way that you monetize, because companies pay to advertise through your game.
Thank you, Joy.
I think just to pick it up from there in terms of monetization, because it's similar. So there's also for the animation space where you have your screenplay partners. So you're actually taking it to a media house, or it's Netflix, where people can actually watch and pay for it, including movie theaters. And I think I've seen a lot of that. There's merchandise, right? So again, a lot of these things can go into merchandise. It's your jumpers, it's your tees, you're selling. There's also NFTs. Now with crypto, you can actually create NFTs and people are buying ridiculous amounts for that. So those are still some of the ways that you can monetize your talent. When it comes to how do we then show up different to be able to unlock the monies, on top of that, because she's mentioned technical skill, she's mentioned understanding your customer. A lot of times we are building for self to sell, and it does not sell. You need to understand what does a customer, the consumer want to see, then build for that. But thirdly is also creatives don't treat their art as businesses, because remember in an investor pitch they're asking for your business model, how will you market traction, you're talking about your revenue, your projections. Half of us as creatives, that we don't want to know. We just want, I've created animation, please help me make money. So you also need to be business savvy to understand the language of the stakeholder. Any partner is saying, I want to see return on investment. Create for me a roadmap to see how I'll move from point X with 1 shilling and make 10 shillings. Yeah. So again, that's how we can also unlock some of the money.
Okay. Thank you. Still on monetization, I would like you to give us very individual specific examples when you actually monetized when you joined the industry. Let's start with you, Joy.
Super. So weirdly enough, I think when we started the animation studio, 2 months in, because I mentioned we wanted to get into programs before creating content. Why creating content would take longer? It's a project you'd find. We were doing a movie called The Last Libon. It was a Maasai story, and we wanted to do it for 30 minutes. That would put us in production for almost a year, right? So you need money, but you need to be producing as well. So what we did is we got into the program side of it, where we created programs like Nikon, and they're doing phenomenally well, to be able to allow stakeholders to actually put in the cash so that we can do something for the creatives. And so the first set of money I got was my pre-seed investment. I raised $150,000 from a venture capitalist in Nigeria. And so that was really cool, because then I got to buy my equipment, I got to hire people, I got a physical space. And then I started pitching my program to development sectors, because they give you grant funding. And we raised $250,000 from MasterCard Foundation to be able to roll out to 47 counties and get about 30,000 beneficiaries of the program. So those two instances. And of course, now we would go to client. Again, that's another facet of how we made money. Would go to Unilever and say, hey, we want to do an ad, and would get paid for it. So by the time I was leaving about 3 years ago, we had made almost about $350,000 worth of revenue from client work.
Thank you. What about you, Dorothy?
Okay. I'm gonna take you back to when Malia started. That was in 2012. One of the greatest challenges there was lack of talent within the continent. And again, are there games being made in Africa? There are people developing games in Africa. So that question keeps going on and on and on. But the ecosystem has gotten better. The landscape is improving, and there are people making games. And when Game Up Africa started, was with that objective, right? Let's create a space where people can actually learn how to develop games games, and not just for Malio Games, but also for the rest of the ecosystem, because we train all across Africa. So Malio Games is based in Nigeria, but when we train people in Kenya, then they can go to Meccan Games and work there, for example, or other game studios within Kenya. And when Game of Africa started, that was in 2021, we worked with Google. So we have a lack of talent as a problem, and we're approaching Google with this problem that we want to solve for the continent. And this is when we started making our first money, right? Cash, to train people and to also develop this talent, after which now we can create our games. So we created What King. Last year we created a third party game. So approaching people that we can create a game for you. And we did a game with Disney. It's called Disney Iwaju Rising Chef. That's a premium game. And this is also a different way of monetizing, where you create a game for a third party, and you get paid for it, for your developers, and also as an investment to your studio.
Thank you so much. And the next question is, what role does the local storytelling and cultural representation play in making Africa animation and gaming more competitive on a global scale? Joy, please.
Sure. So the one thing that is untapped potential, not just for Kenya or for Africa, is we have very unique stories. In fact, if you think about the Lion King, you can imagine the West is coming to tell us how we live and our stories in terms of our wildlife and whatnot. But when we tell our stories, and that's where the Last Live one came to play, we were telling a story about the Maasai. It was the culture, how do they live, the community, the food. A lot of the West really celebrate the stories that we have. We just don't know it, right? Because I think it's our day to day. So, what role does storytelling have to do with, the development of the space? It's that when you do tell your story, people are willing to listen. In fact, I have been to, it's called Cape Town, where they have the animation festivals, and they have different countries come to showcase their stories, and they get investors like this willing to say, I want to help you to produce, or I'll give you money to do that. So I think the more we're able to curate, and this is a call to script writers, it's not just how you tell your story, but how do you then see ways in which you can monetize within your story. For example, we've said you can do characters, you can make them NFTs, you can do merchandise. There's so much that you can do within a story beyond just the film or the animation or the game that can really help you to really grow your craft, right? But number two is community. You can't do it by yourself. I, as Joy, I can't create an animation of 30 minutes by myself. I need a huge community. So how do we collaborate as artists to say, I might not see the money now, but I'm willing to work towards it. And there's this thing where creatives are often offended that we put out work, then when it comes to let's share the money, hapo ndo kizungumkuti inaanza. So again, it's that storytelling leads a lot of opportunities, if you ask me. And yes, it's just how we do it and how collaboratively so we go about it.
Dorothy, please.
I think it's a similar story within the game industry, right? So the greatest challenge is lack of talent, or rather, because we have the talent, but it's not at par yet, right? It's a growing industry, and storytelling is something that we have as a very key resource. And as Joy said, we don't know it, and other people are trying to tap into that. So there's actually a whole sector in the game industry called culturalization, where people study on how to bring about this culture into game experiences. And so the minute we start thinking about it in that way, or people who are getting to upskill and learn how to do game development instead of going to develop stories that already exist, for example, going to create stories that are already there or games that already exist, how can we start thinking of how to bring about our experiences? Because if you watch Kenyan film, for example, it's very relatable, right? So you'll see something and you'll actually watch it because you can feel that it's something that you've seen or you've experienced yourself, and somebody else watching it can actually learn about the Kenyan culture, for example, which might be different from the Nigerian culture. And that is something that if you bring into a game, because game is actually very interactive, so you're not just consuming, but it's prompting you to do things, so you can actually teach and influence through games. So it's a call actually for people who are upskilling to tap into this and try to see how they can storytell in a way that can teach people and also tap into the existing market.
Thank you so much. So, how do we balance uh, accessibility, affordability of our creations as well as maintaining high quality. Joy?
So that's very interesting, and I'll take it in three parts. So for one is a talent upskilling. You have all these programs that give you an opportunity to actually learn what's new, right? If you think about Meta, every day Instagram has a new feature, right? There's a new way of editing your video, and so you are wanting to tap into these programs where you can learn the new skills, and more than just learning how to use the software, the programs even give you an opportunity to work with partners and actually have a real time experience. As I mentioned, we were partnering with studios in the US, and you're saying you're part of an engine and you're learning how they work, including discipline, right? So there's that. But number two is how do you tap into resources? And I think here's where the stakeholders come to play. When you think about hubs, like Kenya Film Commission has digital hubs that has allowed artists to actually go and have access to a computer, to softwares, that you can curate your stuff without buying it first and foremost. And then number three would be how then do you show up? And again, we've said LinkedIn is a global village. You do have perks. Like Toon Boom, sometimes I think in is it media, they often give free credits for people to try some features within the software. So you're being smart around how do I take opportunity of what I have because I can't afford. I won't lie to you, both gaming, filming, and animation is very, very expensive, right? But there's ways that you can actually cheat the system in a way that it works for you and see how do you grow your craft before you can actually own a business.
Dorothy, please.
Yeah, I think with games, so unlike animations, I think because once you release an animation, then you can't really improve or update. With games, it's possible to constantly update, and there's something called live ops, right? So all these features, for example, now that we are approaching Easter, for all the games that we have on the App Store, we can add an episode, for example, that's just for Easter, or we can update our user experience to just match Easter. We're currently running a Ramadan campaign, so we can do this on all our games. When it comes to Easter, we do that. And so for accessibility, you need to understand the devices that people have already, right? So you're not urging them to buy this new device because you have a game. I mean, do they know you? So you want to understand what devices already exist. So in Africa, for example, it's a 90% mobile continent. So most of the games that people play are and people have access to our mobile games, right? And another thing now to tap onto monetization. So with monetization, mostly you have people getting in their credit card info, and it's very hard to do that, especially in Kenya. So you want to make sure, is there another platform that people are more familiar with and might be willing to pay with, right? So if it's so hard to put in your credit card info, if we have an M-Pesa feature, for example, and something costs 10 shillings, for example, within the game, then it might make it more friendly and more accessible for someone to pay with it. There's also this other that has been experimented with airtime. So if you already have airtime on your phone, you can actually use it to buy things within the game or to progress your game, which might make it more agreeable to some others as opposed to putting in the credit card info. So it's getting to meet people where they're at instead, and then growing from that as opposed to taking them to an entire space where they're not familiar with.
Okay, thank you. What data or trends have you observed regarding women as consumers versus creators in the creative and digital spaces? Joy.
Women are consumers. And of course, I say that in a light note, but not. It's true. We're good at consuming up other people's crafts. That's not a bad thing. We're good at feedback, but we're not good at actually moving the needle to want to create, right? Again, based on data, on the programs we run, on the participation. While I said that currently at my workspace, we have 80% of women, when I was in animation, we were only 10% women, myself and the project manager, right? Every other person was a man. Now, can that change? Absolutely. And we're seeing more women. And I love it that even with the Gen Z, if I was to call them that, as you're looking at more developers leaving schools, people are actually going to school to learn the craft, right? And a lot of them being women. So that's a good thing. Maybe the challenge could be, again, having more forums like this to talk about. Let's take it from the top. How do I start? Where do I start? If we had access to that information, I think we'd see more participation. But yes, I would say that women are, more consumers than they are creators. But it's also good to see, like today, we're seated, it's a women panel. It's Anne who was was telling us about the programs we're running. So more women are stepping up, and we're hoping that tenfold and more of that can happen so that we can kind of take the industry and participate at a 50-50 at the bare minimum. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Dorothy?
Right. So I'll just echo what Anne has said because we find the data. We actually have more players who are women who play a lot more frequently on a daily basis as opposed to men. But when it comes to creation, we have a much lesser percentage. So as I said, we get around a 20% application rate. So we've had 5,000 applications up until date, and out of this, it's just 1,000 women, right? And for this, it can be a negative loop in that when we have more creators who are men, they are telling stories in their perspective or in their experiences. Sorry. And this can also influence how people consume it because if somebody's telling a story and you don't relate to how that story is being told, you are much less likely to be hooked on that as opposed to when it's told in a way that resonates with you. And so when we have more male creators, then we can have this content less likely to be consumed by women. And I think if women make that shift, right, from consumers to creators, then it's even more likely to increase this percentage of consumers who are women.
Thank you so much. Moving on, you both have ties to mentorship and capacity building. How can an emerging creative woman in the digital enterprise benefit from networks? And you could also share some of the mentors that have also helped you get where you are. Joy.
All right, super. Mentorship, that's very dear to me. I say today I'm 30 in my second business, and I couldn't have gotten here if it wasn't through mentorship, not just from women, but also from men. So that's for one. For two, I often say that you may sit there and you want to be mentored. The question is, do you know what you want from this mentorship? We often assume that because this person seems to be successful in their business, they're actually a good mentor. Maybe they're also learning on their journey. So, for one, you can say, hey, Joy, I like your craft. I like you're doing AYZ. Can you teach me on YZY? Right? And if you come with a specific ask, I find that mentorship is very spot on in addressing the need or the season you're in within your journey. That's for one. For two is show up for such events. In fact, you would find to be able to sit with me for 2 hours would be more difficult while I sit here for another 2 hours and you can get access to the information that you need. And that's not just Joy, it's any person that you're looking out for. So show up to events where it could be free, it could be paid for. I keep saying, don't steer away from events where you're paying because you're investing in self, right? Then number three is watch a lot of content. It doesn't have to be mentorship on a one-on-one. There are a lot of podcasts and interviews that have been done. You can get something from someone to learn, oh, this was the challenge and this is how they navigated. I also say that LinkedIn is a global village. Right now, you can go and talk to the CEO of Unilever if he'll answer your DM. But you never know, right? You could visit and said, okay, let me humor this person. So really put yourself out there. And my mantra to life is you have absolutely nothing to lose, right? Whether it's a yes, whether it's a no, the fact that you showed up, the fact that you tried, you can score mentorship. Now, who are the biggest mentors in my life? For one is my dad. So he's an entrepreneurial mentor for other businesses. But ever since I was young, he used to teach us that, Dad, I want money for a movie. He says, go wash my car. Then I'll give you money to go. He was teaching me money sense. Right now, I'm very money savvy in how I spend. When I think about the industry players, I did find women within the spaces, and some dropped off, some are still with me, and they're my biggest champions. When I go on LinkedIn and I say, hey, this is what I'm doing, and they're there, they're like, hey, I've seen your growth. I'm very happy for you. And I'm like, oh, this is a challenge I'm facing. Because remember, even as an entrepreneur, challenges don't stop. There's no one day you wake up and say, I've figured it out. So, mentorship, you need it as you keep going. But do you know, surprisingly so, even my employees are still my mentors because I'm learning something new. I'm learning business in a different perspective. They'll tell me, hey, we're trying this and it's not working. So what can we do? You're co-creating. Yeah, I think in terms of mentorship, it would be that. So know what you want, dare to try and keep showing up. And also, as you're being mentored, call upon yourself to mentor someone else. I think that's how it works and how you can actually make real impact.
Thank you so much, Dorothy.
How I think about mentorship is that you can learn something in 1 hour that you'll probably take a whole day to learn. And with this mentorship, again, it doesn't have to be one on one. It can be this session that we're having. It's going to last maybe an hour, right? But if you wanted to learn all this information about the game industry or about the animation industry, and you're sitting at home trying to Google that, it might take a whole lot to learn. This might be general knowledge, right? But we are speaking from experience. It's something that we have seen, we have experience, we have the data, and we can tell you how it is, right? So, and as Joya said, know what you want, right? So try it. Comes also with a lot of self-awareness, because there's so many things that might be interesting to do, things that you might want to do, but once you try and identify that I want to do game development, right? Even game development on its own, it's very broad, right? So I want to do programming, for example, or arts or audio. Then you can start to identify these people and know where they are. So, especially with the growing industry, you'll have a lot of such forums available, both virtual and in person. There's Nikon, for example, which takes place every year. And attending this gives you access to a lot of people that you may not have known before. You may not, or you may have known them, but you haven't interacted with them. And this gives you a lot of insight into something that you might not have known, right? So personally, my mentors, my dad as well. So I have a very, very, very supportive dad. So he's someone who's gonna see that you want this or you like this, and he's gonna ask you about it, right? So I did a very major switch from mechatronic engineering to game development, and it's something that he'll listen, right? He'll want to understand what your thinking process is. If it is this something that you want to do for the long run? And he's going to mentor you with it. He's actually going to connect you with people that are in a similar industry. So I remember when I mentioned that to him, and he's proposing all these people that we can go and meet to learn from them and see how the industry would work. And that gave me a lot of insight into how this can actually get to work. And within the industry, I've had several people. So I organize this monthly events for people within the ecosystem. And so as I organize this, I also talk to a lot of people in the global game industry who help to mentor not just me but also everyone else as we organize these talks. My CEO, Hugo Obi, he's the CEO of Malio Games. And the one thing I really like about him, and as much as he's my boss, right, he's gonna have this one-on-one sessions where he's going to tell you like this is how, because he's been in the industry way longer, right? But in this case, he's not just top down. He's going to actually like tell you this is the challenges that I'm facing right now, and this is how we're going to overcome it. Let's do a brainstorming session. Let's do this and this and this. And it helps me to really learn how things take place in such a seat, right? And it helps me grow to that point where I can actually see how managing a game studio would work. Yeah.
Thank you. Could you please share what you envision as the next big opportunity for women in the creative and digital economy in Africa? Joy, please.
Wow, the opportunities are endless. I think we've talked about how diverse the space is for animation, film, and gaming. So, for one, I would say that a lot more of the employers are being open to the point of hiring more women. It's actually becoming a policy driven agenda where now institutions are being told you have to have 60-70% of the women. So what opportunity lies there? Again, I also believe in opportunities find a prepared mind. Do you have the skill, right? So you saw that job, and Dorothy said it so well. You saw the job was advertised, you said, maybe I'm not qualified. Go ahead and apply for it. That's for one. For two, there's a lot of opportunity within the entrepreneur space as well. I would say if opening a business was as easy as everyone says it is, I think everyone would be in business. So you need to understand why are you doing what you're doing and have the grit to be consistent. It's going to be tough, but keep going, right? And then Dorothy has also said it so well. You will get to interact with people even today. And I keep saying you will walk into a room and you will meet someone. The value might not be instant. You might not see where I'll need them, but down the line, you remember, oh, oh, I need to do XYZ, Dorothy is the right person for it, right? So show up for spaces like that. And as you're continuing to build your social network, because it's ultimately your net worth, then you'd say, okay, fine, I'm an employer, I'm an employee. If you're an employee, I say give your employer the best version of yourself. That's how you learn how to run a business. If you are an employer, then give your employee the best version of yourself by listening and nurturing them, because that's how you make the difference as well. For women, it's that show up, and you never know what you can unlock for yourself, but the opportunities are endless.
Thank you, Dorothy.
I'm not sure about the biggest opportunity, right? But I think there are several opportunities in the game industry that go overlooked because, well, looking at it generally, it seems like this very technical field, right? But if you think of gaming as a business, because we hire HR, we hire marketing, we hire accounting, we hire admins. So there are several different places to tap into within the game industry that are not outright. And it's a very interesting space to be in, because the people that we have in the non-technical space, they still get to interact with the game industry, and some actually get to shift later on if they develop an interest, and they can shift into something that is more technical. If somebody was maybe interested in art, then they can learn from, because we encourage a lot of peer learning, right? Even within our boot camp, as people get to create in their different environments, we regularly have something like a game jam where the artists are going to collaborate with the audio students, they're going to collaborate with the programmers to create a game. And this creates a space where you can actually get to learn different skills and tap into a career, for example, that you didn't know you had an interest in.
Thank you so much. On to the next question, which I'm really looking forward to hear what you're going to say. If you could give advice to a younger self just starting in your specific fields, what advice would you give? Joy?
Oh, what would I tell younger Joy? Again, I think it's that dare to dream and go for it. I'm a go-getter. Anyone who knows me knows that I don't take no for an answer, and I will bag you until I get what I want. So I would tell myself, believe in yourself that you can do it. As we said, a lot of women don't first and foremost have the confidence that they can actually do what it is that they want to do. So for one, dare to dream. Believe in yourself, but mostly it's discipline. Once you start to pursue that one thing, be disciplined enough to see it to the end. And it is okay to pivot, right? At whatever point, but still ask yourself, why am I doing what I'm doing? If you ever lose the clarity of your why, then you start wallowing in a lot of possibilities, and that's how you end up dropping. So it's that dare to dream, Joy. I think she did, and she's kicking ass at it. I'd still do it the same way over and over again.
Thank you. Dorothy, what will you tell younger Dorothy?
Uh-huh. I think I've always been a person of several major interests, right? So I will like a lot of things and I will go for all of them. And I think one thing that I would tell little Dorothy is choose to be resilient, right? Again, pick something, go for it, make sure you are acing it. And I think when I picked gaming, because I had already explored so many technologies that weren't really doing it for me. And when I chose game, that is when I saw a place where I could really bring in technology and art and make sure that I am building something out of that. So it's bringing all my interests into one particular field that I can actually grow in and be great at it. So it's pick one thing and make sure you are really good at it, right? So you don't want to be just be a general person. People are doing this and you are also doing that. It's people are doing this, but this one person is really excellent at it, so go for them.
Can I add one more?
Yeah, sure.
One more would be no one owes you anything. Yo, I can tell you that in business, even as an employee, we make the mistake that people owe us. Oh, I did a degree in game development, so someone owes me a job. Not at all. Or you've gotten to that company and you're the intern and you're serving tea and you're like, these guys are wasting my skill. Not at all. It's the one thing that builds your resilience around seeing opportunities where there are problems. When you begin to eradicate expectation, you see the opportunity to tap into what is right in front of you and make the most out of it. So you'd even find it's that business you've started, you're saying, oh, I need funding, I need that partner. And they say no, and you're kind of feeling like you failed. You didn't fail. They just didn't see your vision. And it's okay. Not everybody gets it. The people who do will come your way and you'll still thrive in what it is that you want to do.
Thank you so much. So, as we finalize, here is my last question. What legacy do you hope to leave behind for the next generation of women in your specific fields? Dorothy, could you start?
Sure. Right. So with how I visualize gaming, I really admire how the Kenyan music industry is doing, right? So there was a point where we didn't particularly know or we weren't particularly proud of the music that is being created within the continent. But at this point in time, if you don't know a Kenyan artist, then you're the one who is not cool, right? So it's gotten to a point where we are really proud of what we create, we consume it, and we promote it, we evangelize it to the world, right? So that's how I think of the Kenyan and the African gaming industry, because we are working to build a community of creators, and I wanted to get to a point, excuse me, I wanted to get to a point where people actually know. The moment we ask if people know studios within the continent, then everybody his hands should be up, right? Studios within Kenya, people's hands should be up, and they know this game, and they know they have a favorite game within the continent that they can actually promote and share and say that this is a game I love, this is a game that is being created by this person, and you're looking forward to see the next game that they're going to create. I think that's a space that I would really want the Kenyan and the African game ecosystem to get to.
Thank you, Joy.
Super. So two prong. One, on a corporate level, it's that to build communities of women who actually champion more communities and more communities. Because if you think about it, even as an institution, there's only so much you can do. But if you empower a select group of people and they get to empower, we call it train the trainer, right? So being able to have animation studios that are known, you walk into a space and you say, how many of you have watched Kenyan animations? And, the whole hall is saying, I've been there, I've seen that, and we appreciate it. That would be a sight to see, right? On a personal level, is two things. I'd love to empower the woman behind me, and it also starts as an employer. Anytime I meet that lady in an interview table, I might not give you the job, but I give you feedback why you didn't get it. Number two is if I do get an opportunity to work with you, I'd love to see how do I bring out your strengths and help you to improve the areas in which you're weak at. But number three is how do I prepare you to take the seat I'm sitting on, right? Now, I don't know whether you get to work with me for 10, 20 years, but even those 2 years you spent with me may it be the scaling that you need to be better in that next job that you get. That's for my personal calling is joy.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Joy and Dorothy, for your time and honesty. This has been really inspiring. And I really hope everyone has gained something. And we are all motivated and inspired to change our mindset and also just to improve ourselves. So, as women, one thing we are learning is we need to support each other from the ground up to the top. And let's do that. Thank you so much.
Dorothy and Joy, if I could just have you on stage for a short Q&A session, and then we can have a representative from Alliance for Say, Miss Harissa Waters, to showcase some of the projects that she's running. So after this, please, Joy, have a seat, and Dorothy. Do we have any questions? I'll just allow 3 questions due to time, and then we move on to Miss Harissa Waters from Alliance Francais. Anybody has a gaming question, animation question? The industry itself is riddled with questions. Yes.
Hi, my name is Harsita Waters. I'm the head of cultural affairs here at the Alliance Francaise. Thank you very much, Joy and Dorothy. That was a really inspiring discussion that we had, and thank you, Joy, for moderating it. My question to Dorothy is: what are some of the games that Malio Games has produced? Do the Kenyan audiences know about these games?
Okay. We have four different games that are being published. We have What King, which was released in 2021. It's a card game. It's sort of like poker, but localized to the Nigerian market. It's our best performing game currently. We have Disney Iwaju Rising Chef, which was released last year in partnership with Disney. That's on Play Store and App Store. All of them are mobile games. We also have Safari City, which was published late last year. It's a match three game and a renovation game. Then we have Crazy Ludo, which is still in development, but it's on App Store and Play Store. It's been published.
Amazing.
Hello, my name is Jerry Wahome. I'm a creative director and film director. My question is going to Joy. My question is, how do I position myself to be not just in spaces and places, because that's one thing, right? But one thing that kept on being stressed over and over again from both of y'all was talking about investors and really getting to know them. So the data, where would I start when it comes to my research when I have a film or a project or a fashion ad I want to make?
All right. I'll also have Dorothy answer. I'm sure she'll give you some great insight. So for one, I say, where do you start? LinkedIn is your friend, right? One thing that people don't understand is a lot of people discover you online even when they don't tell you. And in most of the spaces I'd walk into, they'd say, "Hey, I saw you guys did this project. I've seen you doing this bootcamp. Where did they find that?" It was on LinkedIn. And so that's as Joy. And you'd find currently I've built my profile like that, that you can keep track of it because investors are also looking out for what projects can I actually fund. So while you're looking for them, they're equally looking for you. That's number one. Number two, within your communication, because that's my background, is how are you putting yourself out there? So you've said you're a creative director and you're saying that we have this film, we're looking for funding. What are you looking to do with the funding? But number three, in terms of research, is you will find films who've already been funded. You want to know who has funded them, right? Again, so if you find that ad animation has been funded by Platform Capital, then you go back to Platform Capital and say, "Hey, my name is so and so. We're doing this project. Can I interest you in a meeting? Have a clear ask on Monday at 2 p.m. This is the agenda of the call." Half the time, I found myself getting a no, I can't meet you on Monday, but I can meet you in 3 weeks. That's still a positive, right? So I'd say those three things are the simple ABCs of how to start.
Yeah. I'll just add to that. Don't wait to be found, right? So make sure that you are also doing your own outreach. Make sure you are visible. So one of the things that we've really seen, especially with Malio Games and Game Up Africa, the moment you start telling people about Game Up Africa, they're like, "Oh, we've heard about you so many times," and we're wondering who are these people who have been talking about us. But it's because we are there and we've been creating this impact and we are talking about it. You also don't want to just be creating your work and have only your friends know about the work that you are creating, because even the investors, they are looking for uh, businesses and places and initiatives to fund, right? Because that's their goal, to find prospective and promising businesses to fund. So just make sure you are visible, not just on LinkedIn, because I've also seen that Instagram is really growing in terms of the game industry especially. So you'll find a lot of game studios or gaming events being publicized on Instagram and LinkedIn. So just make sure that you are in the spaces that you want, because you can also curate your social media to be in your interests, right? So if you're on Twitter, for example, people might have this perspective of Twitter, but if you have created your feed, for example, to be in animation or to be in gaming, there's so many opportunities that you can still find within those spaces that other people don't see because they're not interested, or they haven't curated their platforms to be in that space.
Okay. Thank you very much. Uh, my questions basically go to Dorothy and Joy Mwangi. I'm more in research, uh, but I happen to stay a lot in Bangalore, and I think Bangalore is a IT hub of India, and I know India has very much developed in the animation industry and the film industry. And you talked about collaboration, and the world has become a global village. Now, on this aspect, assume that somebody is here in Kenya, but he is interested to create animation. Let's say I'm interested to create something on Londa Magere, a story, animation game that can be played. But I can explain to the Indian the story and they can develop the animation. Are you seeing that that one can open up actually the opportunities because they have the talent, the good in talent, but we have the story so that at least we can expand the industry here in Kenya or even Africa? Thank you.
All right, so I'll take that question and I'm going to personalize it because when we started Malio Games, most of our talent was outsourced, right? So we have the idea, we have the concept, and we are outsourcing this to people outside. And we decided that this is not something that we want because we also want to build our ecosystem. We want to make sure that our creators are also upskilling. So currently, we only hire from within the continent. All our developers are from within the continent. And it's something we consider benchmarking because we have several sessions where we bring in experts to just speak to our team, but we mostly focus on upskilling our own as opposed to taking the talent elsewhere, right? And it's something that we're also doing within the bootcamp to make sure that people are growing and they are increasing their skills so that because you get into a situation where if you are outsourcing to a different place, the moment you stop, then there is no creation going on within the continent, and this brings up the concept of sustainability, right? Because we want to make sure that the industry is also growing from within and not just the one time outsourcing every once in a while when you need something. We want to make sure that the people that are within the continent, even when they stop working for us, they can still go on to create their own game studios and still continue to build games from within the continent.
Is there an opportunity to collaborate? Absolutely. I'd say four facets within your example. For one, I hope with your story you have a lawyer who's copywritten that for you because a lot of artists lose their IP when you share it with too many people, but legally you're not backed. That's number one. Number two would be within the programs and the bootcamps. Again, we're looking at where do I start if I don't have the funding? There are bootcamps for script writers. That's where you're making your networks. Why? While you can come to art animation and say, I want you to develop the story, I'll ask you, do you have the script? Right? That's where you start. So when you form networks of scriptwriters who can help you to farm up your story, is it a 1 hour? Is it 30? In animation, I'd say the shorter it is, the more possible it is for you to actually achieve it and actually see how you can monetize it. So that's number two is the script writing. Number three is as far as animation. So do you want it to be an animation, maybe a white paper animation? Is it 2D animation? Is it 3D animation? It gets complex as we go. And the fourth facet of any animation project is that it can actually become a game, right? So again, you're working, and I can tell you this: as long as you're legally backed up, sample it to other animation studios, see whether they'd be willing. But there are bodies that have already put together these artists, like A3K, when I mentioned Animation Association of Kenya. They have animators of well up to 200 within the Kenyan facility, and they're saying we can put up a bid to call that we have someone with a story. Are you willing to work on it? And we see how we can split monetary wise once it begins to earn. Again, you'd find people who are willing to say yes, right? So there are opportunities to collaborate locally if you want to produce your story.
Thank you for those questions.
So maybe just to Joy and Dorothy, a kind request. Where do we find more details about yourselves? When's the next boot camp? What do we need to look out for?
Okay. The Game of Africa Bootcamp runs annually. So we do August to December every single year. This will be our 5th year running the bootcamp. Applications start in July. We put this out on our website, gameofafrica.com, as well as on all our social media sites, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, right? Aside from the Game of Africa Bootcamp, we run a monthly developer meetup event. So this takes place virtually every third Wednesday of the month. We also advertise this on our social media sites, and it's a part. it's a platform where you get to meet other developers, storytellers. If you're just interested in the gaming industry, but you're not sure yet, you also come in and get to see, because we have different topics. Just last week, we covered insights on best teams from Supercell, which are the makers of Clash of Clans, Brawl Stars. And you get to meet these people and understand from their points of view. So this is something you can also tap into every single month. Make sure you are just learning and getting these nuggets of wisdom. Even if you're in the industry, right, you get to know from experts who have done a lot more games, and they have more experience to learn from that. We also have game jams. These are short game competitions, right? So they run for 7 days. The Malio Summer Game Jam takes place in June every year. So you get to collaborate. So there's opportunities to collaborate with people from across the globe, and you have developers, designers. You bring in your ideas and you create a game within a certain theme for 7 days, and you publish it, right? So we have various other programs and events, but they are majorly aimed to build the ecosystem and make sure that people are coming together to build and thrive the community.
For animation, I'd say step one, join A3K, please, 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 and become a member. More than just learning about the animation space, you actually can get internships, you can get, to see job openings. There's a lot of posting, including boot camps for animators. Number two is for art animation. You can find them online, I think, on all platforms, as well as Twitter. And how do you get me? If you go to my LinkedIn, Joy Mwangi, you'll find me there.
Joy Alunga.
Yes.
Yeah,
On
pretty much it.
animation, I'm also part of the animation team. We work with Kugali Media, and we're among the people who created the Iwaju animation. And we have Kugali Academy. So on the website, you can go and join the Kugali Academy. They do training for specifically African young creators. And when you do well, they hire you. So you can also go there and find a space where you can learn.
Great. I know a lot of you have a lot of burning questions, but the event is far from over. I'm sure Joy and Dorothy will be around. So Ms. Harrison Waters is already making her way on stage to showcase the success of some of the stories and projects funded by Creation Africa.
Sorry, we haven't got time to showcase the stories because our tech team had to go for a sound check. But I wanted to invite Anne to tell us now what the next process is, because this is a six session she creates capacity building program. The next sessions, Anne will describe how you can join the next sessions, and they're targeting specific areas, gaming, animation, film, etc. Anne will explain that. But I do have a question for Joy. Joy, you are called a creative innovator. Please share with our audience here and our audience online, what does a creative innovator do?
Wow. That that is interesting. I didn't pick the name, but I accept the title given. As a creative innovator, I would say I'm more of an interdisciplinary artist. I stretch from graphic design to animation, and I have come to a point where I've specialized into motion graphics. So that is what I mainly do. And apart from that, I also do painting and drawing. But since you're moving with technology, I've now moved to digital painting and all that. So technically, that is why I got the title Creative Innovator.
Great. Truly inspiring. A round of applause for our amazing panelists. And Anne, as she makes her way to the stage.
Okay, so what next? That's the next step. So for me, I'm quite excited. It's been a few months of planning and putting this together. Thank you once again for coming today. As I said, we have 5 main pillars as Nikon that we focus on, which is gaming, comics, animation, film, and technology. And those are the things that we're going to be focusing on this particular program for. So what the next steps are is that I need you to look out for, if you're interested into getting into this year's cohort, you need to follow us. Keep your eyes on the Nikon page, on the Alliance Française page, as well as the French Embassy in Kenya page, because you're going to be doing a call for applications, which is the next step. after which you're going to be doing a selection. We are going to be using the hub that Alliance Francaise has here, which is amazing. If you've not been to the library upstairs and checked out what the hub has to offer, I urge you to do that, because that is where we're going to be doing the program going forward from. So the selection bit is going to be done by a panel between ourselves and Alliance Francaise, which are going to select a few of the girls to join this year's cohort, which is running between next month all the way to October, where we're going to have them graduate. And looking forward, of course, to growing the program into next year and more partners coming on board. But as I'd mentioned, the various aims for which we're running this for, from enabling you to grow, growing the community, providing resources, is all up for grabs for all of you. So keep your eyes on our pages, and then the rest of the information is going to follow suit. Yeah, and as we close, let me say asante sana, merci beaucoup to Alliance Francaise, to Creation Africa. Thank you, Maurice, for coming. I wasn't expecting you today, but thank you so much for being here today with us. And for the rest of you, thank you for coming. Spread word. Nikon has a lot to offer throughout the year, as I'd mentioned, in terms of what we put together. But let's talk. Before you leave, my urge to you is make sure you speak to somebody that you do not know. That's the best way to be able to network. Hopefully collaborate with the next person you're going to be meeting together. I'm not quite sure if you guys know about the story of Nikon. We started in 2014. It's been a journey, and especially for the people who are starting off, it's not always easy, and especially in Africa. If you listen to the people who are here, it's a space that's growing, but it's very fulfilling for people who are very resilient. And if you've got the passion and you know what it is that you're getting yourself into, and believe me, it's very fulfilling. So asanteni sana. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next sessions. Asante.